This is 1.5. You're going to learn how to interpret markings on diagrams. So not only naming diagrams, but in objects and shapes and lines, but then being able to tell what the marks mean on the shapes. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is congruent segments. We should probably talk about that. Congruent means equal or the same. Okay, so congruent segments mean they're going to be equal or the same. The way you're going to know that segments are congruent is they're going to be marked with the same number of tick marks. So like little tallies, little straight lines, whatever you want to call them. Directions say to identify two segments that are marked congruent to each other on the diagram below. So looking at tick marks, that would be, I'm going to zoom in just a bit. That would be right here and right here. So if another one had 2 tick marks, that means that these segments would not be congruent or equal. You pick the ones that have the same amount of tick marks. So I would call this line FK. Remember our line segment, and then IJ. Okay, and how these notes are going to work, I want you to pause and try number 2. Okay, you should have noticed that we've got 2 lines that have 2 tick marks. So that means that they are congruent and equal in length. So we've got MH and HI. Okay, next thing we need to talk about is parallel segments. Parallel, we know that lines run the same direction. They're angled the same. They'll never touch. And they're going to be marked with the same number of arrows on them. Okay, so it says identify 2 segments that are marked parallel to each other on the diagram below. So we've got arrows, and we've got 2 here and also 2 here. So that means that these lines are running parallel, which it looks like this is a square, but never assume in geometry that a shape is what it looks like. All right, so we've got HK and IJ. And actually, what I should do, instead of putting an and sign there, is make my parallel symbols. Let's put a parallel symbol in between them. There. So line HK is running parallel to IJ. All right, go ahead and pause and do number 4. Looks like there's 3 arrows. I know this is not the best picture. 3 arrows here and here, so that means that line JI is parallel with KH. Remember, order the letters doesn't matter. All right, then we're going to talk about congruent angles. So if congruent segments were equal or the same, then congruent angles means they're equal or the same. And that means they would have the same measure as well. They're going to be marked with the same number of arcs or tick marks on the arcs. I don't see a lot of the tick marks on the arcs, but I wanted you to know it's a possibility. So we're going to identify 2 angles that are marked congruent to each other on the diagrams below. So these have 3 angle marks or arc marks here and here. So that means these angles are the same. But what we've learned is I can't just simply call this angle R because there's 2 angles formed here at R. So I would specifically have to call this angle VRS. Angle VRS. Remember, you go the other way, SRV, but you're going to have to use 3 letters. And then put and. Really, the congruent symbol is an equal sign with a squiggle above it. I can't remember if that's on our homework or not. And then this angle, I'm going to call VST. Or TSV. Okay, go ahead and pause and do number 6. Okay, again, I see 3 angle marks. So I would have to call this RQW is congruent to angle VTU. Or backwards. Okay, there is another little part when you talk about I couldn't get all this to fit on a page. It says right angle / perpendicular. We've talked about already that perpendicular means it makes a 90-degree angle. It's marked with a box. It says identify a pair of segments that are marked perpendicular to each other on the diagram below. So right here is our box. That means that line KL and SL would be perpendicular. Remember, our perpendicular sign is an upside down capital T. Okay, go ahead and do number 8. Here's our box. So you should have said something like line JL or LJ is perpendicular to IL or LI. Okay, and that does it for knowing the special markings.